There are several battles that happened in Manila, such as the Battles of Manila 1570, 1574, 1762, 1798, 1896, 1898, 1899, and lastly is the Battle of Manila 1945. And today we would like to give more focus to tackle the Battle of Manila 1945. The Battle of Manila 1945 is started on February 3 to March 3, 1945. According to the history, during World War II in the Philippines, there were numerous bloody encounters between American forces and the Japanese army. One of these encounters is known as the Battle of Manila in 1945. It destroyed the city of Manila for 29 days, taking 100,000 innocent lives in the process, as well as millions of pesos worth of priceless historical buildings. Consequently, it is regarded as the most gruesome fire in the Philippine history. Though it left millions of Filipinos with unpleasant memories, this battle is still significant in the Philippine history because it helped the country achieve the true independence. The Commonwealth eventually recovered control of the Philippines after the Americans' victory in the Battle of Manila. In the Battle of Manila, and in order to fulfill the temporary requirements of the Tydings-McDuffie Law, the concession law that recognized Philippine independence in 1946, the Commonwealth had to be revived. To put it another way, without the Battle of Manila, the Philippines might still have been a part of the Japanese Empire, and the Filipino people might not have been able to find their own de facto republic. Therefore, the Battle of Manila served as the crucial turning point that gave the Filipinos the chance to finally realize their aspirations of independence and sovereignty for foreign rule and even dependence.
So we're gonna talk about the brief history of the Philippines under Japanese occupation during the World War II. The Philippines was a colony of the United States at the time of the World War II and was a strategic target for the both Japanese and the Allies. The Japanese military launched an invasion of the Philippines in 1941 and quickly overran the American and the Filipino forces against the islands. The Japanese occupation of the Philippines lasted from 1942 to 1945, during which time the country endured some of the most brutal aspects of the war. Despite these hardships, Filipinos resisted the Japanese occupation through guerrilla warfare, sabotage, and the acts of civil disobedience. In 1944, General Douglas MacArthur returned to the Philippines with the promise of liberating the country. The US and Philippine forces, aided by Filipino guerrillas, eventually succeeded in driving out the Japanese army by 1945. Today, the Philippines remembers the Japanese occupation as a period of great suffering and loss, but also as a testament to resilience and bravery in each Filipino. And so, Michelle will be tackle where and when the battle begins.
Battle of Manila 1945 begins with the arrival of the 6th U.S. Army under Lieutenant General Walter Kruger, waded ashore at the Lingayen Gulf, and began a rapid drive south in the Battle of Luzon. It happens on January 9, 1945. After the arrival of the U.S. Army, Kruger was ordered by MacArthur to go to Manila on January 12, while on January 27, MacArthur commanded the army to go to Manila and free the prisoners and take the Malacañang and Legislative Building. Meanwhile, the war in Manila fired out on February 3 with a span of 1 month, then ends on March 3, 1945. And now, let us find out and tackle what are the highlight events in the Battle of Manila 1945.
The highlights of the Battle of Manila 1945 are the Santo Tomas internees liberated, encirclements and massacres, Intramuros devastated, and the aftermath of the Battle of Manila 1945. Since January 4, 1942, a total of 37 months, the University of Santo Tomas main building had been used to hold civilians. Out of 4,255 prisoners, 466 died in captivity, 3 were killed while attempting to escape on February 15, 1942, and 1 made a successful breakout in early January 1945. The campus of the University of Santo Tomas, which had been turned into the Santo Tomas Intermittent Campus for Civilians, the U.S. Army and Navy nurses, sometimes known as the Angel of Bataan. So on February 4, the 37th Infantry Division freed more than 1,000 prisoners of war, mostly former defenders of Bataan and Corregidor held at Bilibid prison, which have been abandoned by the Japanese. The next day, February 5, they negotiated with the American to allow them to rejoin Japanese troops to the south of the city, freeing only individual arms. So the Japanese were unaware the area they requested was now American occupied, the Malacanang Palace, and soon afterward were fired upon and several were killed, including a Japanese named Hayashi. Early on February 6, General MacArthur Douglas announced that Manila had fallen. In fact, the battle for Manila had barely begun. Almost at once, the 1st Cavalry Division in the north and the 11th Airborne Division in the south reported stiffening Japanese resistance to further advances into the city. The Japanese forced Filipino women and children to be used as human shield into the front lines to protect Japanese positions. Those who survived were then murdered by the Japanese forces. So the assault on Intramuros started at 7:30 a.m. on February 23 with 140 gun artillery barrage, followed by the 148 attacking through breaches made in the walls between the Quezon and Parian gates, and the 129 crossing the Pasig River, then attacking near the location of the government mint. The fighting for Intramuros continued until February 26. So on the February 23, the Japanese released about 3,000 civilians held as hostages after killing most of the men in the group. So Colonel Noguchi's soldiers and sailors killed 1,000 men and women. Iwabuchi and his officers committed suicide at dawn on February 26. The 5th Cavalry Regiment took the agricultural building by March 1, and the 148th Regiment took the legislative building on February 28, and the finance building by March 3. So before the fighting ended, MacArthur summoned a provisional assembly of prominent Filipinos to Malacanang Palace and in their presence and declared the Commonwealth of the Philippines to be permanently re-established.
Fought by both the United States and the Philippines against Japanese troops, the Battle of Manila in 1945 was one of the major battles in the liberation of the Philippines from Japanese occupation. The month-long battle, which ended on the 3rd of March, signaled the end of the 4-year-long occupation of the Japanese regime. It also signaled the end of numerous atrocities that the Japanese forces committed, including sexual slavery and torture, where they performed experiments to native Filipinos. It was also one of the defining moments of the Pacific War during World War II, being dubbed as the worst urban fighting fought by the American forces in the Pacific Theater.
Today I'm going to be discussing about the effects and the outcomes of Battle of Manila in 1945. So first outcomes or effect is the irreplaceable places, culture, and historical treasure is lost was lost before. And because of that tragedy, those structures that has historical events damaged and lost their beauties. And also, this battle called as or remembered as a national tragedy. Then next is 70% of the utilities, 75% of the factories, 80% of the southern historical residential districts, and 100% of the business district was razed. So that battle has a big impact before or after the battle. Lots of structures, businesses, utilities was damaged, and because of that, the large amount of damages in the Philippines and to the Filipinos, this battle called one of the greatest tragedies of World War II in the Philippines. And lastly, 100,000 men, women, and children are perished. So, because of that or that tragedy, many civilian Filipinos lost their lives without a fight, and it gives a grip to the whole country, which is the Philippines. So those are the information that I collect, but there are many things or many effects to the Filipinos regarding that war.
On February 18, 1995, the Memory Manila Foundation 1945 dedicated a memorial called the Shrine of Freedom. This is to honor the memory of the over 100,000 civilians killed in the battle. As a memorial to the World War II casualties, Fort Santiago was designated as the Shrine of Freedom in 1950.
To make it summarize the documentation of the Battle of Manila 1945, the worst urban fighting by American forces in the Pacific theater took place during the month-long battle, which claimed over 100,000 civilian lives and completely destroyed the whole city. During the battle, Japanese forces massacred a large number of civilians in the Philippines, and American firepower also claimed many lives. A significant portion of Manila's architectural and cultural heritage, which dates back to the city's founding, was also destroyed by American artillery and Japanese resistance. Along with Berlin and Warsaw, Manila became one of the war's capital cities that had suffered the most destruction. The Japanese military occupation of the Philippines in 1942 to 1955 was put an end by the battle. General Douglas MacArthur identified the city's conquest as being essential to his campaign of reconquest success. It is currently the last of numerous battles fought throughout Manila's history. For me, personally, it matters to me as individuals since it serves as the reminder to protect my freedom, our freedom, to defend the state's security from invasion, prevent corruption from destroying the state, and aid in maintaining the republic that our veterans of war have fought for in the past. Additionally, I want to advocate for the abolition of the culture of war and violence and the advancement of diplomacy in all forms conflict, and the Battle of Manila serves as the reminder that no one wins in a war. Everyone loses, everyone wins, and it depends on our time. And with the help of monuments, shrines, and markers, we are remembering this unpleasant history. But unless we are able to show our sympathy and support for the war's victims and veterans, as well as to understand wars do no good to anyone, memorials and markers of the Battle of Manila will remain concrete and still monuments respectively.